Yeah, so, that's kind of old information. It's just kind of being repackaged. Peter Diadamo would eat right for your blood type, did that kind of stuff years ago. A lot of the data that he took, it was misinterpreted. And so, um, to think that just a few substances impact everything in terms of biological responses to, let's say, wheat or gluten, it certainly can be true for some people, but it does not explain the wide variety of responses. We know that data that looks at genetics and looks at microorganisms, and we run simple tests like blood sugar levels after eating, that no two people respond exactly the same way to any food. So you can't now predict someone's response unless you study the individual. And so in let's say in populations that are genetically isolated, let's say a small island where the people never leave the island and they only marry other people on the island, so the genetics are fairly homogeneous. In those situations, you do find that lectins can be a major determinant of responses to food. But now, as those people leave the island and now they move around the world and they start to marry other people, and you have now children that have genetics from different groups, if you will, so now their genetics become more heterogeneous, then in those cases, you do not see the same responses. So I would say it certainly could be an issue for some people, but I don't think it will explain the results for everyone. It also doesn't address, there's a concern right now specifically with wheat, is in European countries, genetically modified food is not allowed in, I don't know if every country, but in most of the countries. So if you went to Italy and had pasta there, and then you come to United States and have pasta in an Italian restaurant here, buy something from a supermarket, you have different biological responses to quote unquote wheat. But the wheat is not the same. The wheat here has been genetically modified. And so there appears to be this consensus that the genetic modification of food has an effect that our bodies are somehow realizing or understanding and reacting to, but it may not have been picked up by the way the study designs were done originally. So like the stuff got passed because it was supposedly safe. But if you look at all the capabilities we have today, none of the current scientific methodologies were applied to all these foods that were approved years ago. So it kind of, they could have gotten approved by sneaking past something because no one knew what the reactions were. Whereas today, people eat food. I hear lots of people say to eat wheat and they feel so bloated afterwards. I've seen those same people go to Italy and eat pasta there and feel nothing at all. So there's definitely appears to be some differences either in the forms of wheat or the way it's engineered or the way it's processed or presented to the body. And there's one other possibility is that many people with food allergies, they assume it's a food allergy and they totally ignore the fact that the majority of our biomass is other organisms. So we have all these bacteria and these fungi and some other types of organisms that may not be so pleasant to hear about. And when we eat food and that food goes down, our mouth, down our esophagus, into our stomach, it's encountering a microbiome where there's all these diverse organisms that are going to see that food technically almost before the rest of our body does. And they will produce chemicals that affect us. So some of the reactions we have to food, it may not be directly to the food per se from our own immune cells. It could instead be organisms reacting to the substances they're presented with, creating chemicals that influence our symptoms that we experience.